And welcome back to Patience is a Virtue, the YouTube channel devoted to finding value in future sports wagering. I'm your host, Andrew, and on today's episode, we're going to take a look at the outright market for the CONCACAF Gold Cup, which is a soccer tournament taking place here in the USA, and it's going to get started this Saturday, June 14th. Now, this is a tournament, for those of you who don't know, that it takes teams from North America, Central America, and the Caribbean, as well as a few other teams that are just invited to sort of fill it out. So, for example, Saudi Arabia is going to be taking part in this tournament. Now, here's how the format works. There are four different groups, and in group play, every team plays everybody else. So, there's four groups, four teams in each group. So, you're going to play three games. The top two teams advance out of those groups. So, let's take a look at those groups. Now, Group A is going to be Mexico, Costa Rica, Suriname, and the Dominican Republic. Now, I really do expect Mexico to easily win this group. They shouldn't have any problem defeating all three of these teams, and it might even be a chance for them to test out some different lineups and to rotate in some players. But I really see Mexico having a very easy job of winning this group. So I think that's a pretty solid pick right off the bat. And I would expect Costa Rica to come in second. Now, I don't expect them to be able to beat Mexico, but they should be able to defeat the other two teams. And so I really think Costa Rica is probably going to be your second team coming out of Group A. Group B is going to be Canada, Honduras, El Salvador, and Curacao. Now, just like Mexico, I do think the North American team is going to win this group. I definitely would go with Canada to take the top spot. In this situation, the real question is going to be who's going to end up finishing second between Honduras and El Salvador. There really isn't a whole lot separating those two teams. And when they play each other in the second game, which is going to be taking place on the 21st, I really think that's going to go a long way to deciding who is going to end up advancing into the knockout stage and who is going to end up going home. I think Canada has a very good chance of winning all three games. And Curacao likely won't get any points in this competition. So I really do expect the Honduras and El Salvador. That should be a pretty competitive game, most likely lower scoring because neither team is really going to want to lose. They're going to have a chance if they at least draw in that match. But I think that's really what's going to decide who is going to finish second in Group B. Group C is Jamaica, Guatemala, Guadalupe, and Panama. Now, for me, this is really the most even group, and that's hard to say in the Gold Cup, which is it's very much a tournament of teams that have and teams that have not. But in this situation, I really think that it's going to come down to Panama and Jamaica. Both are solid squads, but Panama has shown me just a little bit more throughout the years. And so I do give them the nod to possibly take this group. If I was going to pick anybody to win the group, I would actually take Panama. But Jamaica is a very strong team, and it's not going to surprise me at all if they're going to be able to take the top spot. But either way, I think it's probably going to be Panama and Jamaica who make it out of Group C. And so finally, we have Group D. Now, Group D is Trinidad and Tobago, the USA, Haiti, and Saudi Arabia. Now, normally this should be a group that the U.S. will very easily win and get out of the group. And I do expect them to be able to ultimately advance because Trinidad and Tobago and also Haiti, they're just not very strong. But Saudi Arabia is a pretty good squad, and they could definitely give the Americans problems. And I think between the two of them, one of them is going to win, one's going to get second. So I do think the U.S. has a good chance of getting out, but if you haven't heard, there has been a lot of criticism of the U.S. team leading into this competition. First, because they lost two warm-up friendly games. Now, they was against good teams. They lost to Turkey and they lost to Switzerland. And again, they're good teams, but the U.S. was not that competitive in those two matches. And also, the U.S. has a couple important players who are going to be sitting out, most notably Christian Pulisic, but also Yunus Musa and Anthony Robinson, just to name a couple. And the criticism really is the idea that this is an international competition and a chance for the U.S. to win a trophy. And so these players really should be, being present and being there for the squad. And they're just not. And so there's a little bit of infighting. And I think at the very least, it is some distraction among the U.S. team. And the U.S. is bringing in some other players to fill in those spots, but they're not as seasoned in international competition. And so I don't know what's going to happen if they're trying to rely on those players who just have not been in this situation before. In some ways, it almost feels like the U.S. this is a little bit of a tryout for some of the players for the World Cup taking place next year. So I'm concerned about whether or not the U.S. is really taking the Gold Cup as seriously as a lot of their fans would want them to. But ultimately, I do think that they should be able to get out of the group, but I'm not quite certain that they'll be able to win it. It would not surprise me at all if Saudi Arabia was able to ultimately win this group. So let's take a look at the odds to win the outright title. We're going to start off with the U.S. and Mexico. You can find them both at plus 200. That's the best price, and that is at BetMGM. We have Canada at 650 FanDuel, Saudi Arabia plus 900 at DraftKings. We have Panama at plus 1500 FanDuel, Jamaica plus 1700 at FanDuel, Costa Rica plus 2200 at FanDuel, and then everybody else is beyond that, and really they don't have much of a chance. So here's how we work in the knockout round. Once we get past the group stage and we have the top two teams in each group, the way it plays out is like this. The team that finishes first in Group D will play the team that finished second in Group A. Number one in Group A plays number two in D. Number one in B plays two in C. And number one in C plays two in B. So I'm going to project this to mean that the U.S. is going to play Costa Rica, Mexico will play Saudi Arabia, Canada versus Jamaica, and Panama will be playing either Honduras or El Salvador. Again, very tight match. But that is, if I think the seeding, so to speak, kind of holds, that is what I would expect to see in the quarterfinals. Now, the semifinals are going to be the winner of the 1D versus 2A. That's going to play the winner of 1B, 2C, right? So what that would mean the U.S.-Costa Rica match, the winner of that game will play the winner of the Canada-Jamaica game, right? And then 1A versus 1A and 2D will play the winner of 1C and 2B. Hope that all made sense. So really what this draw means is that if everything holds, the U.S. and Mexico would not play until the final game, should they both make it that way. And although the tournament organizers don't want to admit it, that really is what they're hoping for, because ultimately the U.S. and Mexico are the two strongest teams in this competition. And so people want to see them in the final. And it is a very strong and heated rivalry. And so that's what the folks really want to see. And in that respect, it's very important for the U.S. to try and win the group if they can. If they end up maybe coming in second to, say, Saudi Arabia, they would end up meeting Mexico, I believe, in the semifinals. And so it really is important to try and get as far as they can and to do well as quickly as they possibly can. So my pick for the outright tournament is to take Mexico at plus 200. Again, that can be found at MGM. Honestly, they're arguably the best team in this competition right now. And they always have the Gold Cup as an important competition for their squad. They were long the top team in North and Central America. And since then, the U.S. and Canada have come to challenge that a little bit. But this is a great way for the Mexican team to really try to regain a lot of that dominance that they used to hold. And I think it's very important for them. And I do expect them to put forth a very strong effort. I think they're really a lot less prone to the slip-ups against smaller squads. That does happen again for the U.S. And also Canada to a lesser degree. But you just don't see Mexico losing to the likes of Costa Rica, for example, or El Salvador or Honduras, whereas the U.S. has in the past had those slip-ups. They famously lost to Trinidad and Tobago to not make the World Cup. So I don't see Mexico having a problem of getting to at least the semifinals, and I would expect them to probably at least make the final. And at that point, you can, of course, decide what you want to do. But likely, if Mexico is making the semis or the final, they're going to be the favorite to advance in that situation. So if you do want to hedge, you are going to be getting the better price on their opponent. So that's also very important. And don't forget that the Mexican coach, who is Javier Aguirre, probably mispronounced that, this is actually his third stint as the manager of the Mexican club. He used to play for them, and he actually has won the Gold Cup with the Mexican team back in 2009. So he knows exactly what it takes to get through this competition, and I think he should have the Mexican team ready to go. I've kind of touched on this a little bit, but I think the U.S. team is weak, and this tournament has really turned into a little bit more of a tryout for the World Cup. They're still a good team, and they really should advance, certainly out of the group, at least probably through the quarterfinals as well. But when we get to the semifinals, I wouldn't be surprised if they were knocked off by another team. They would probably be playing either Canada or Jamaica. That would be my guess. Both those squads are tough, especially Canada. So it would not surprise me if the U.S. doesn't even make the final in this competition. And I'm honestly not certain if they even really want to be perfectly frank. Panama is another squad to keep your eye on. Now, they really do play well in these competitions. This is a great opportunity for them to showcase their team. And if you were to rank the teams in North and Central America, you'd probably put U.S. Mexico in some one or two. Canada is really right there as well, and there are times when Canada is the best of those three. But after those top three, I would argue that Panama is probably your fourth best team and a solid team, and they always give teams like the U.S. and Mexico, if not trouble, at the very least, they're very competitive, and they have knocked off the U.S. in a couple of recent competitions. So definitely keep your eye on Panama. I think they could be a dark horse to at least make the semifinals, if not the final. I think Canada is also a pretty good bet. They are also a solid team. They've got a lot of good resources. And so I think Canada is also a team that would be primed to make a run if everything sort of breaks right and they're getting a good draw. In the end, I ultimately have faith in Mexico to put forth that strong effort to really try to win this competition, which I think they really do care about. And I don't think the U.S. really has their hearts fully in it. And even if they do, I don't know if their squad is going to be strong enough to be able to take this trophy. So, in terms of the outright market, I really do like Mexico as my pick at plus 200. Right now, I think I would stick with just them and not really expand out. But if you do want to pick on any other teams, I would, or maybe take a long shot on a couple other ones. I really do like the idea of Canada. It's not too much of a long shot. Again, it's plus 650, but you might want to get a little bit of money on Canada. You might also want to get some money on Panama. I really do like them as well. You want a final one? I would go with Jamaica. I don't know if they're going to make a run, but they do have a history of performing very well in some of these tournaments. So Jamaica could even be worth a very tiny little sprinkle. Now, if you don't want to wait until the final and you wanted to, have something go a little sooner, you can, of course, bet on which team is going to win the group. Now, if you want to do that, I would go ahead and do a parlay of Mexico and either Panama, which you should be able to get at around plus money. I looked one up just on FanDuel. I think it was about plus 137 or so. Or if you're a little worried about Panama getting out, because the odds for Panama to advance to win the group versus Jamaica, they're very, very close. So the bookies see this as a pretty tight edge, slight edge to Panama, but it should be pretty tight. So if you're worried about Panama, that's a little too rich for your blood, perhaps. Do Mexico and Canada. I think both those two teams really should win their group. You could throw in the U.S. and then you could maybe try to look to hedge in their match against Saudi Arabia, because I really think that's the only chance that they will lose points. But I do like the idea of just taking Mexico and either Panama or Canada to advance out of their group. You're going to be getting around even money for like Mexico and Canada. That should be around 120, 130, somewhere in that range. Really not too bad, not too much juice. And it does give you some value. And of course, it's going to be finished in about 2 weeks, whereas the entire competition is going to take about a month. So that's another option on how you want to play it. I'm just going to start off with a ticket on Mexico to win the whole thing. But of course, you can play this however you would like to. And that's going to do it for this episode of Patience is a Virtue. Always remember to gamble responsibly, never bet more than you can afford to lose, and remember, patience is a virtue.